I got a great idea for the AP poll. Why don't we burn it to the ground? That's a great idea. Serious face, is it too much to ask, friends out there, on this Tuesday night, September 9th, the year of our Lord 2025, jam-packed, high atop a sun-soaked downtown Nashville, Tennessee? Is it too much to ask that people who cover this sport, who vote on things that have to do with this sport, actually watch the sport? And it turns out we have an answer to the question. Yes, it is too much to ask. It is Tuesday night, which normally means it's game prediction night, and we got a ton of predictions because we have a really big week ahead of us. But I have to address nonsense as the future commissioner of this sport. No one else is going to do it. God knows the AP's not going to do it, so I'll do it. I have some things and some people, but mainly some things that really have to be called to task tonight. I've got a new JP poll at the end of the show. I've got, Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, say the home team last, kids. We've got USF at Miami, which, unbeknownst to some, is a top 15 matchup, not merely a top 20 or top 25 matchup. We've got Florida in total wounded animal / wounded gator mode going into LSU. We've got Clemson going into Georgia Tech. That's a game I circled in the spring. Everyone laughed at me. Remember, Bradley? They laughed at us. They laughed at us. Clemson's favored by 3.5 at Georgia Tech. ACC Game of the Year potential there Saturday, a noon kickoff. Yeah, we got a lot to get to. And 2 added best bets before we go off of this air tonight. They're watching us in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm just telling you, we're jam-packed. We're jam-packed. We're fired up. It's not the night to be trifled with. They're watching us in London, England. What time is it there? No, after midnight. Well, you stayed up for a good reason. We will deliver for you immunity. They are watching us in Shreveport, Louisiana, and Beaumont, Texas. Hey, the social channels are exploding. Look, if you're not following, you're not really getting the full experience. At Josh Pate CFB, go find it. What are we? Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Prez blowing up the TikTok channel. So yeah, go follow. All right, you asked for it, you got it. I'm starting the show with it tonight. Nice, neat stack of papers here. So many big games to talk about, and we're going to get to them in just a second. You know it. I know it. Now the whole world knows it. The AP poll is a disaster. No matter how little you think of the people running college football, you still think too highly of them. Now, the AP poll's especially been a joke this year. I'm not quite sure why it stood out more to me, but we've talked about it on the show already a couple of times. And I think that's helped to shed a little more light on just how ridiculous some of this stuff is. And you may already be thinking to yourself, the AP poll, that doesn't matter. It matters. It does matter. Maybe not in the ways you think it does, but it does matter. We got a systemic issue here. So let's call it out. Let's talk about it. So the college football public, since there's been a whole lot more light shed on this farce of a poll so far this season, has taken upon themselves to do sort of a college football public ballot audit. And by that, I mean they've started to turn over some rocks. And it's been ugly what they found underneath. It's just going to shock you if you're just a casual observer of this sport, but I am here to tell you that there are a lot of people with their hands on this sport who not only have no clue about the sport, they don't really even care about it all that much. As you gasp in disbelief, I'm going to have Bradley tee up a little bit of sound for you. So I'm going to show you video of a young lady by the name of Haley Sawyer. I'm going to pause before we play the video, and I'm going to tell you, this segment's not really even about her. She's taken a beating online today with good reason because her poll's a joke. However, it's really not even on her. I'm going to play the video, and just so you know the context here, Florida lost to USF the other night. In this person's ballot, Florida then jumped 2 spots from 16 to 14, and USF remained unranked. Okay, obviously she didn't watch the game and has no clue that USF even won the game. That's no breaking news, because honestly, she's probably not even the only person who didn't know that it happened. A lot of the people who have AP votes are beat writers. They have a job to do, to cover a team. And so, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they just kind of mail their ballot in. If that were the case, this would be one of 1,000,001 examples of that happening. But that's not the case, because then what Haley did is she went public and she talked about it, and what would have disappeared or probably never even been seen to begin with by 99% of the sporting society is now front and center, and it's been everywhere today. Without further ado, here's Haley Sawyer. Roll it, Bradley.
But as far as what my votes are and what my process is, I wake up early in the morning after covering a game late in the night before. Don't want to go too much into my progress or process or logic, but I will say I appreciate everybody's interaction on social media and all of your feedback. There's tons of people that vote on the AP poll, and it's not a perfect system, but at the end of the day, no matter who you pick, it does even out because there's so many people who vote. And like I said, it's really fun for discussion. It doesn't, probably matter in the end, but I'm glad that people are having a really good time.
Ladies and gentlemen, the AP voting process. I see a couple of people already taking shots at her for things that we're not going to let you take shots at anyone for in the live chat. So cool that. A lot of people are going to try and turn this into a gender debate. Don't do that. There are plenty of fools out there voting on this stuff who are about as American red-blooded male as it gets, and theirs are no better. It has nothing to do with that. My visceral reaction when I saw that wasn't even about her. She's a beat reporter. She covers USC. I've never met her. I don't know anything about her. I assume she does a great job. It's about the entire process. We've got athletic directors on the playoff committee that have every bit as little a clue about what's going on as she did. At least she's got a job to do, and she's doing it. At least she's turning in a story late at night about USC football. We got people who are athletic directors that are deciding the playoff rankings that have no possible way to watch these games. And to pretend otherwise is asinine. And I look at pro sports out there, and sometimes I wonder when they look at college athletics and they look at some of the quote-unquote problems we have, how laughable it must be. This is totally avoidable, as are many of the instances of anything from laughable to corrupt in our sport. Most of it's avoidable. It's just college football is gate-kept by a bunch of clowns. So I looked at that. I listened to that. I probably initially thought the same things you did, but I quickly moved past having any kind of anger or any kind of resentment or any kind of anything towards Haley Sawyer, because she can only exercise a vote that's given to her. I have looked for a long time around press boxes or around polls or around Heisman voting, and I've just been in disbelief at the people who participate in it, because I know good and well most of them don't care. At least she admitted, it's not that big a deal. I don't really take it all that seriously. We got a little situation here where too many people with a voice in college football care less than the people without a voice. It's just that it's being exposed more now. It's been the case for a while. And I know, I've told this story before. Again, I want to make sure you understand this extends well beyond her. Forget about her, okay? Push the one individual off to the side. It is a systemic sort of issue. It's not a crisis, okay? The world's not going to burn down because of this. I'm not suggesting it is, but it's more of a symptom than the problem itself. The problem is college football is gate-kept by clowns. College football for a long time has been run by people who could not care less about the sport. College football is sort of a play toy for them. College football is sort of a mechanism for them. In some cases, it's just so they can feel authoritative about something, and they couldn't get their hands on a pro sport, so they had to settle for fooling people into putting them in administrative positions that they slithered their way up the ladder in college athletics. And then, lo and behold, 30 years later, they get to decide who votes on this and who votes on that and who decides this and who runs that committee. So they don't really take it seriously. They don't love it. A lot of them don't love it at all. It's just kind of an on-ramp for some of them to get where they want to go, which is news or politics. And for others, it's just they kind of failed their way up. And then they build a model where that ends up happening. And for a long time, you had media obviously complicit in it because that's who participates in it. And only in the last 10 years have you ever even had the ability for someone to shine a light on it. Because anybody who had a platform big enough 15, 20 years ago to shine a light on it was part of it. That's kind of low-key why they hate shows like this. They hate platform, hate podcasting, YouTube. They hate that. Boy, they had a nice thing going for a long time. And only recently has it been called out. Well, Josh, I mean, she's got to cover a USC game. I know that. She has no clue. She has no clue that the USF Florida game even happened. Not her fault. It's no more her fault than once upon a time I was with my mom when I was a kid in the Peachtree Mall parking lot in Columbus, Georgia. And this kid got into the driver's seat of his mother's van while she wasn't looking and actually put it in drive. The car started moving. So there's a freak out briefly, and then the parent, I can't remember if it was a mom or a dad, but the parent runs over and hits the e-brake or, puts it in park. And then guess what the parent did? The parent started yelling at the kid. The little 2 or 3-year-old kid gets yelled at. And I remember, even as a fellow kid, I looked at that situation and thought, why is the kid in trouble? The parent's the one dumb enough to leave the keys in the car that's running with an unattended kid in the front seat. So a lot of people looked at this today and said, oh, Haley Sawyer, take her vote away. Oh, well, guess what you're going to have if you take her vote away? You're going to have a whole bunch of other people who just happen to not be exposed on this particular Tuesday in this particular week who have every bit as big an issue who still have votes. And if you think that's a joke, you ought to see the Heisman voter roll. So you can either look at it and say, yeah, that's a problem that should be addressed. Or you could say, oh, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter at all. Well, what does matter to you? Oh, the AP poll doesn't matter, Josh. What matters to you? Well, of course, the college football playoff rankings matter. Where do you think they get their baseline opinion from? Where do you think they get their starting point from? You don't think this thing right here shapes their thinking? These people are just as inept and just as unqualified or incapable of watching college football in totality as the AP voters are. Do you understand what makes up the College Football Playoff Committee, by the way? It's a bunch of athletic directors. There's one media representative, which, credit to our friends at College Football Nerds, I wasn't even fully aware of. Not only that fact that that exists, but the egregiousness of who that representative is year to year. Those people have no more qualification to rank teams than most of the AP voters do. I kid you not. There are 2,000 people watching this show right now in this live chat that are more qualified than most AP voters and many people on that playoff committee. It's just that college football's been gatekept for a long time by people who had enough authority to make sure that the entire system was this big a joke. And I'm not quite sure, absent electing me commissioner, of course, I'm not quite sure how it changes. But I will say the one thing that people who are dumb enough to build this kind of model have in common is they're not particularly talented. And they also don't really love criticism. And they incur a lot more criticism these days than they ever did before, because a lot of the ineptitude is more visible these days than it ever has been before. But I just wanted to lead with it. Yes, I saw it, and yes, it's pathetic. I just think it's bigger than one person. That's all. I will say this, AP voter or not, they'll welcome you at Quick Trip. We may not welcome you on this show, depending on your ballot, but they'll welcome you at Quick Trip. You can fuel up, you can go in, you can get cold brew on tap. It won't even be out of order for you. I would argue it should be. Now, maybe you need a little coffee. Stay up a little later, actually look at final scores before you turn in your ballot. No, it's a bridge too far. Nevertheless, cross the bridge, look on the side of the road, Quick Trip's there, go in, fuel up, fill up. They are fueling the whole tour this entire year. Fall Don't Lie tour. I almost said, whole new Saturday tour. We're headed to Knoxville, Tennessee this Saturday. We'll be on the sideline for Georgia, Tennessee. We will be there with bells on. Now, any of you who are diehard viewers / listeners of the show know that when we go to Knoxville, we have a special tradition on Saturday morning. And I don't know, you'll have to be watching the Instagram story to see it at Josh Pate CFB. You have to be following there for Friday Night Lions anyway, so I don't know why you wouldn't be there. But it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I don't care if you love Tennessee or despise Tennessee. That particular tradition we have on Saturday mornings when we're in Knoxville, tough to replicate. Speaking of that game, let's break it down. As God intended us to do on Tuesday nights, let's break this down. Georgia, Tennessee, Saturday, 3:30 Eastern kickoff, right there in Neyland Stadium on ABC. The market has corrected on this one. Whew, violent swing on the old odds board here. You see at the bottom of your screen, if you're watching on YouTube, Georgia minus 3.5. Well, they weren't a couple of days ago. They were 7.5-point favorites when this thing first opened, and that got hammered down to 3.5. I'll tell you what the model thinks on it in a little while. I trust Georgia so much in spots like these. That's earned trust, earned respect. It's not that they're invincible. Sure, Tennessee can win this game. Sure they can. But they've got to beat Georgia. Now, that sounds very, very academic. Well, of course, to win the game, they have to beat them. No, this is college football. A lot of times, especially when a team, new quarterback, breaking in new pieces, they go on the road for the first time, a lot of those outfits tend to beat themselves. I just don't think Georgia's one of those. So if you're going to beat them, you got your work cut out for you. You will have to do absolutely that. You'll have to beat them. To me, the most shocking outcome here would not be Georgia losing. Tennessee's a good team. The most shocking outcome would be me watching it and at the end of the day saying, Tennessee didn't really do anything all that special. Kind of like we talked about the Florida USF game the other day. USF didn't do anything all that special. Florida just, kind of gave this game away. I doubt we're saying that about Georgia as the sun goes down Saturday. But it is a cannot versus have-not situation, We see this every now and then in college football when something hasn't happened in a long time. In that case, for instance, paper popper here, close your ears in Knoxville, 8 in a row. That's the streak Georgia has over Tennessee, 13 of the last 15. So there's a lot of that leads people to think, well, Heupel/Tennessee cannot beat Kirby Smart/Georgia. That's not true. They just have not. We're, 3 years removed from turning the cannot beat Alabama into a had not beaten Alabama. But now they've beaten them 2 out of the last 3 years. Oh, all it took was Saban retiring. Wrong. They did it to Saban before he retired. Maybe they'll clip Kirby here. Don't say cannot. It's a have not situation. Tennessee, though, last year, we went to this game last year, they thought 2 things, and both of those things were wrong. And they need to be more right about these couple of things this year. The first thing they thought last year was they had an edge at quarterback, even on the road. They thought Nico Iamaleava, this is what we recruited him here for. This is what we invested in him for. Carson Beck's looked shaky this year so far. Georgia was already a 2-loss team by the time they played this game last year. And so Tennessee, they're coming off the Bama win. A couple of weeks later, they're going down there, and this is the moment where we're going to take them down. And we got 2 edges or so, we think. Quarterback's going to be an edge for us, and we got the better run game. And neither one of those really played out. Beck thoroughly outplayed Nico Iamaleava. A padlock stat from this game last year, Georgia was 11-1 edge on passes of 15-plus yards. They had the explosive pass in their back pocket. Tennessee did not. The run games were pretty even. But remember, Tennessee got up to a 10-0 lead in this game, and Georgia just boat races them, 31-7 the rest of the way. So Carson Beck went off in that game. Is that what Georgia needs this year? What kind of game, what kind of profile does this game have this year? How do you cut the head off the snake, which Tennessee has been unable to do? The way you cut the head off the snake, which is what you have to do to take Georgia down, is you got to match physicality. Now, to their credit, I thought this was maybe one of, if not the hardest hitting games we saw last year. Tennessee does not struggle to match physicality. They are an extremely physical team. You got to be able to run the ball effectively. That's what Tennessee does best and has for a long time under Josh Heupel. You can always pick the ones who do versus don't watch Tennessee games out by how they describe Heupel's offense. Kirby talked about this earlier this week. It's been a running theme on this show. If you want to spot the ones who do watch the games versus claim to watch the games, ask them to describe Josh Heupel's offense. Because the ones who talk about it like it's air raid, pinball, basketball on grass, they're posing. They don't watch the games. This is a run-based offense. They rush it for 2,500 plus every year. This game last year, they ran it okay. No one feared that they could throw it over the top. So if you tell Kirby Smart, hey, we want to run the ball, but also we can't stretch the field on you vertically, it's a losing proposition. Don't really care who his personnel is. His personnel is going to be good enough. So you got to be able to run the ball effectively. You got to be able to limit their run. And I think there's a lot that remains to be seen about the Georgia run game. They've looked markedly improved from last year, but this is a much bigger stage. They haven't played quality competition either. For as much as people are saying that about Tennessee, Same with Georgia. And you've got to dare Gunnar Stockton to beat you, and you got to trust Joey Aguilar to beat them. If that sounds scary, it's because it is. There are no sure things here. You got to take some chances. Georgia still has a roster advantage on you, not a gigantic one, but they do. So you got to find little edges here and there where you can, and one of them is, to my surprise, Joey Aguilar has looked like he's been playing in the system for a while so far this year. It's just that the competition level ramps up, the pressure level ramps up so significantly this week that maybe he's just got it. And if he's that guy, Tennessee may win this game. That's why we play the games. I just keep listening to people talk about how bad Georgia's looked offensively. Oh, Josh, have you seen how poorly they have looked? And it's everything that they're saying about Georgia's offense has one thing in common. It's all past tense. I don't really care what they have looked like. I care what they will look like. And I have this sneaking suspicion, because I've watched this guy coach for like a decade almost now. Has it been a decade? Almost a decade. Anyway, Kirby Jeremitrius Smart does not normally run inefficient offenses out there. Now, they may not throw for 550, but they don't really care to throw for 550. What they care to do is be balanced. Last year, tight ends put Tennessee in a blender. Mike Bobo, look, I know this is a headline that they don't like hearing in Athens, had a really, really good game against Tim Banks last year. And they find ways to win, and they tailor their treatment to get offensive linemen back for this game, and they go and get wide receivers out of the portal, knowing full well we're really not going to unleash whatever we do with those guys until we can branch up against the star position on Tennessee's defense. Like, I don't care. I could not care less what a 2-hour rain delay and complete lethargic nature against Austin Peay means for this game. It means nothing for this game. So, Joey Aguilar versus Kirby Smart's defense. Now, he's at home, but it makes me think about last week. It makes me think about listening to Bryce Underwood and the hype around him and seeing him go against Brent Venables, and he was rendered pretty helpless. Now, in that case, it was because he didn't have guys to throw to. Gunnar Stockton has guys to throw to. Can he pull the trigger? Can he be effective? I mean, one thing that's a hallmark that you hear people say anytime they're talking about him is ball control, ball security, makes good decisions. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. It's Georgia. They've surrounded you with plenty good enough players, even to go on the road and win games like this. Tennessee has not consistently stretched the field. They have not consistently hit big plays through the air. This is a several-year problem for them now, and they just flat out have to do it. All the rest of the stuff notwithstanding, they just got to at least make Georgia concerned that, hey, this kid could pop us over the top if we're not careful here. You know why we know? Because he did it in the first quarter. That would be a game changer here. Otherwise, the field gets compressed and it's nothing. It's outside the opening script, which you hit them with last year, you're just shut down. That's how it happened last year. That's how it will happen again if they can't stretch the field. So what I also wonder is how much pressure Tennessee's able to get without blitzing. Because there is a world where Georgia's offensive line is not fully gelled here, and it looks like we'll get some guys back on that right side, which couldn't come soon enough. But I don't know what to expect from that offensive line. Now, I know Oklahoma last week was put to the test, and they passed that test. So maybe Georgia goes on the road here, and maybe the statement of the game is the pressure or lack thereof that Gunnar Stockton was put under. And you got to understand something. If you got a superstar quarterback, there's a tendency psychologically for a team to go in a game thinking like Cam Ward with Miami last year. Well, even if all else fails, he'll bail us out. No one's thinking that about Gunnar Stockton. So there is a keen awareness in that offensive line room that this game kind of rests on our shoulders. And that's pretty common at Georgia. But there's something that does to you, especially when you're going on the road, first game in conference play. Look, those guys have a challenge on their hands, but it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if Georgia wins this, and it's because that offensive line really, really performed above general expectation. Maybe the ground game did as well. But if it's Georgia just running the ball, it's academic. So that goes without saying. But they went and loaded up the wide receiver room. And I wonder, do they need those guys in this game? And if they do, is this the time where we see a couple of those guys break out? Because there's really good versatility and depth in that room. But overall, it's just I'm waiting for Tennessee to finally make it happen in this matchup. And the mentality I have is while I'll sit there and say, stop saying they can't, stop saying they can't, it's also fair to say, I'm going to make Georgia prove me wrong by losing instead of prove me wrong by winning. So here's what FanDuel thinks about the game right now. Georgia's favored by 3.5. Our model pretty much agrees. Georgia minus about 3. I think 3 1/10 of a point. Yeah, I'm riding with Kirby Smart in Georgia, and I'm just going to make Tennessee prove me wrong. And they have. They did against Bama a few years ago, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think there is vulnerability. I think there's a lot of unknown for Georgia. That's why I go back to what that G means to me. Independent of the individual personnel groupings, that G to me means it's a consistent outfit, and when they go on the road, they can handle business, and if you beat them, you got to do just that. You got to beat them. They're not going to hand you a game. And they're going to have better athletes than you, and you got to beat them as they don't hand you the game. Now, I could be wrong, fence riding, according to some, but if I am wrong, I'm going to make Tennessee prove me wrong by pulling the mild upset there. They're watching us in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Lehigh Acres, Florida, Spokane, Washington. Thank you guys so much. A lot of you are in the live chat. Thank you as well. Most consumed college football show in the entire galaxy, they tell me. So do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Just be nice. Just be a friend of the program so we don't have to have an evil executive come to us one day, which can't happen because we are our own boss after all. But we never want anyone to say, hey, here's $40 trillion. You want to put the show behind a paywall? No, we don't need to because we got everything we need right here. We already do, really. I appreciate it. Sometimes I just joke about that. What a big game I have in my hand right now. No immunity there. Texas A&M at Notre Dame, Saturday, 7:30 kickoff Eastern Time, NBC. Let me set the scene for you right quick. If Notre Dame loses this, they start 0-2. Crisis. Freak out. There's some talk on the college football streets, by the way, that if Notre Dame's 10-2 and the rest of their schedule doesn't do them any favors in terms of quality wins, there's some scenarios where Notre Dame at 10-2 is left out of the playoff. I don't believe that. I'm just here to echo what I'm hearing on the streets. So that's the Notre Dame side of things. The A&M side, to me, is even more curious. Texas A&M believes that they have built an identity and built a roster that can do what Notre Dame wants to do better than Notre Dame can. And that's what I love. That's what I love because I was circling this game in the preseason saying, now hold on a second. That tailback stable at Notre Dame is something fierce. And that offensive line more than proved itself to me last year. But yet I've also got 2 or 3 of them that can tote it for Texas A&M. And that offensive line should be good as well. And if I know anything about the identity Mike Elko wants to have, he doesn't ever want to finish number 2 in the physicality contest nationally. And, oh, wow. They play each other early in the season? Sign me up. Texas A&M, paper popper of a stat here. No road wins versus ranked teams since 2014. A little misleading because it is ranked at the end of the year, which, if you go and beat a team, it serves to be mentioned that they're less likely to be ranked at the end of the year. But I digress. It's been tough to get traction for Texas A&M on the road. This is a rested Notre Dame team. Yes, they already had a bye. Wounded animal mode, wounded Irish mode. So let's dive in here because this right here is where we find out about Texas A&M, but not on offense, defense. Because defense let them down the stretch last year. Defense was what Mike Elko looked at and focused his rage on and put both hands around the throat of, figuratively, and said, I'm taking control here. We will not lose for the same reasons 2 years in a row. So this is where they show you. Because Miami did. Miami showed you. Miami defensively showed up against Notre Dame. Words don't get stops. Players do, as Meemaw would say. So A&M's got good players. Do they have good enough players against a desperate Notre Dame at home to maybe knock them off their rhythm, maybe make Notre Dame do something other than what they want to do, sort of dictate terms, if you will? 28 carries for 93 yards. That's what Notre Dame had against Miami. And everyone looked and said, why didn't we run the ball better? Could just have been Reuben Bain. Mesidor, Reuben Bain, like they got really, really, really good guys, versatile guys, 3-down guys in their defensive front. And maybe you won't face a group like that again the rest of the year. I guarantee you Notre Dame's banking on that number being a lot higher than that. So that's part one of what I can't wait to find out. The other one is I'm going to go right back to this theme. All right, Bryce Underwood against Brent Venables last week. We saw that. We saw a young quarterback sort of get put in a pressure spot right out of the gate. Didn't go well for Underwood. We're going to see Joey Aguilar against Kirby Smart in Georgia this week, and that'll sort of be his introduction to big boy college football, all due respect to App State. C.J. Carr got his out of the way already. C.J. Carr, I thought, played very admirably. I thought he validated Marcus Freeman's decision to make him QB1, even though they lost against Miami. I thought he played very well. They showed some trust in him. I think he showed that he's got a lot more dynamic ability, frankly, than Riley Leonard showed him that he had last year. Marcel Reed's going to have to respond in this game as a result. Like, as much as people will talk about the ground games, it's going to come down to a quarterback winning the game. And, I was doing TexAgs this morning, and David Nuno said, hey, why isn't Marcel Reed getting more attention nationally? Well, he hasn't done anything to earn it yet. I think it was my answer there. And I don't mean that as a shot at him. I mean, there was nothing Marcel Reed was going to do against the first two opponents they played to change anyone's mind on him. I don't know if he's changed any Texas A&M fan's mind on him. This is where you change people's minds. This is where you go in there and you steal the show. This is a Colin Klein game too, man. Colin Klein's the offensive coordinator there at Texas A&M. And, I think they believe that vertical pass threat. I really gathered in spring they believed in these big games that those plays were going to be there for them, and it doesn't matter if they're only there once or twice. Number one, if you complete them, that's a big deal. Number two, even if it looks like you could have completed them. I mean, think about how differently that makes someone defend you. There is one thing that could be a gigantic X factor here. The Miami pass rush got after Notre Dame. And I'm sitting there watching it and thinking that feels unfair. Like there's some NFL offensive lines that if they had to go up against these dudes on the Miami front would have a tough time. So it seems a little unfair. So I'm willing to not give a pass, but I'm willing to take it into proper consideration. Okay? You go back home, you're 0-1, you fought hard, but Reuben Bain took the game over in the fourth quarter. These things happen. Well, what if Cassius Howell does it to you this week? What if for a second straight week that pressure rate's off the charts? What if C.J. Carr is forced into bad looks, bad decisions, a couple of more turnovers? Lost the turnover battle against Miami. What if that happens again? And what if the number one talking point about that team last year, which was the offensive line for Notre Dame, ends up being low-key a vulnerability the first 2 weeks? I don't think it'll ever be a weakness relative to the whole country. But Notre Dame's not going to have a weak offensive line. It just so happens, or it could happen, that they face two really, really bad matchups the first two games of their season. If that happens, you could start 0-2. Very well could start 0-2. So let me show you what the model thinks about this game. FanDuel right now has got this Notre Dame minus 6.5. Model just a little bit lower than that. Model's got Notre Dame minus 5. There's something about desperation mode and really, really good staffs with time to prepare and home field advantage that makes it tough to go against them. But I do think this is going to be a dogfight. I do think points are going to be at a premium. May lean the under on this one. It's sitting at 49.5. I'm not betting the under, at least not right now. But I will take Texas A&M plus the points. However, I will take Notre Dame to win. I think it'll be a one-possession kind of game. So I will take Notre Dame to win. There is not a dime of my money that will be bet on a side in that game. The odds to win the national title right there, Notre Dame's in it. Texas A&M would shoot up that thing if they were to win this game. You can go to Academy Sports and Outdoors before a lot of you are headed up there. I know a lot of you Texas A&M fans have circled this one for a while, and you're going to make your pilgrimage up there to South Bend, and I highly recommend it. This is to me, this is the best time of year to go to Notre Dame's campus. They would say later in the year when it's cold. Cold weather sucks. So go up there when it is late summer, right on the precipice of fall. You can feel it. You can taste it in the air. And Texas A&M is Academy country. So you stop by Academy before you head up there, and you should just litter the Notre Dame campus, not with garbage. You litter it with Academy wagons and tents and chairs, enough to where some of our friends up in South Bend go, maybe we need one of those here. Maybe we need 5 of those here. Maybe I ought to go to academy.com if I can't get there in person right now. We appreciate Academy. They don't make tailgating possible. Tailgating's been around since the cavemen. No, it makes tailgating better. Or camping and hunting and fishing and any outdoor recreational activities, but tailgating amongst those. Let's continue. We got more games to break down. Whoo boy, I thought we were going to be at this game last week. Then things happened. Florida plays LSU this Saturday, 7:30 kickoff, Death Valley at night, you know the thing, 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. Florida fans are furious for obvious reasons. LSU fans are generally unhappy right now for less than obvious reasons, because most of you did not watch the Louisiana Tech game last week. That would be where they were favored by 37.5 and scored 23. Offense looked like it wanted to be anywhere other than Tiger Stadium. So, here we go. All right, Florida LSU, part 900. College football is not World Wrestling Entertainment. There is a general line of thinking out there that is much akin to watching a wrestling match. And that is, all right, well, so-and-so got the upper hand. Here comes the comeback. Feed the comeback. Feed the comeback. And it's the same way with Florida right now. There's a solid portion of the college football public that thinks, well, Florida got beat last week, so this is where they'll bounce back. How do you know? How do you know they're not just dead? Did you think Florida State was going to bounce back last year when they got beat by Georgia Tech? Then what happened? They were dead. How do you know Florida's not dead? I don't think they are, but I don't know that. You don't know that. LSU could win this game by 30 Saturday. LSU could also lose the game outright. That's why we're breaking it down. This is another Blake Baker game, defensive coordinator at LSU. This is a Blake Baker game. I would say that DJ Lagway in that offense looked pretty pedestrian against USF last week. Logic says I should expect an inspired effort here. But see, here's what my eyes tell me. The depth, versatility, and talent profile and pressure packages that this LSU defense is going to throw at me if I'm Florida are a different league, respectfully, than what I saw from USF last week. Oh, by the way, I've got 2 jet engines in each ear that's called LSU at night that I have to deal with, and I haven't dealt with that so far this year. This whole operation's been wobbly at home. Now I got to take it on the road. That ought to be fun. It's a Blake Baker game. Now, on the other hand, there's a Florida sort of production versus potential paradigm that I'm fascinated about in this game. It sounds a little something like this. So sometimes you expect things about a team. With Florida, I'll tell you what I expected. I expected that DJ Lagway had takeover potential. He could take over a game. I expected their offensive line could do the same, that their ground game could do the same. I looked at this specific matchup in the preseason and said Florida's defensive line should have a decided advantage against that LSU offensive line. And you know what? I've seen absolutely nothing so far that shows that should be the case. So the production piece is not there. But the potential piece, was I just wrong? Many are suggesting yes. I just overhyped Florida. Maybe you're right. But there is another possibility that, for my sake, better be correct. And that other possibility is, no, the potential is there. It's just unrealized so far. Unrealized potential. Well, if that's the case, and I don't want to do anyone's job for them, but if that's the case, and play caller Billy Napier is watching the show, I'd suggest turning that potential into production in this game. Because if you don't, you may not have much more rope left, may not have many more opportunities to do that. On the other side, on the flip side, I'll ask the same question about LSU in this game I asked about the Clemson game. What will LSU ask Garrett Nussmeier to do? Because what they asked him to do in the Clemson game was very fair. What they asked him to do in many games last year was not. What they asked him to do last year, for instance, in this game here, was throw the ball 48 times. Do you know that LSU ran 49 more plays than Florida in this game last year and still got beat by 11? How's that even possible? How is it even possible? Explosive plays, that's how it's possible. So if you find yourself in a situation where Florida stones you up front, you can't run the ball, it's 3rd and 8 all night, and you're asking Nuss to throw the ball a whole lot, I'm not saying you can't win. Maybe you will. I trust him. It's just I don't think that's the best spot that he needs to be put in, nor should he be put in that spot. Just make some plays. You know, if defense holds Florida to 20 or less, first off, there's not this pressure to trade points. If LSU just does what they did against Clemson, forget that. If they can just do against Florida what USF did, 4.4, 4.5 yards per carry, plenty good enough. Plenty good enough. I mean, it's not an insanely high bar to clear. So that'll be plenty good enough. At that point, you just ask Nussmeier, don't lose this game. We'll take our shots, but mainly we just need you to get us in the right looks, need you to not turn the ball over, make some plays, and we'll get out of here with a win. That's how that should go. Will it go that way? The vibe coming out of LSU is just way better. I don't even mean, LSU's won every game they've played. So far, Florida's 1-1. I just mean like Brian Kelly won a game last week and threw his entire staff under the bus. And then I listened to the other side, and Florida lost a game, and it's like, we're not changing anything. Nope, we got our process here. We're going to stick to it. Look, Billy Napier does not owe the public an explanation. Well, kind of he does, because that's who you're accountable to ultimately. But it's highly unlikely that they're really not changing anything internally. It just may be that he didn't feel the need to share that at a podium, at a press conference. But, man, the vibe coming off LSU, I love. I love that. It doesn't guarantee a win, but I do love it because it shows the sense of urgency that, frankly, they haven't always started the season with. It shows Brian Kelly feels pressure. Pressure's not a terrible thing. It's not a bad thing at all. And he's coached for 1,000,000 years, so he gets it. I think they probably have a staff advantage here as well. So Florida's got an uphill battle. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel's got LSU -8.5 right now. I got to be honest with you, before I pulled the thing up, I thought we were going to lean solidly Florida. We really don't. We've got LSU -7.5. So I do think we'll get as inspired an effort as we can get out of Florida. I do think that. It's just you couldn't afford early losses because this is the kind of game you're not supposed to win. So you got yourself in a position now where you burned up all of your equity, you burned up all your insurance, your wiggle room, and now you're trying to win games as more than a touchdown dog on the road in the SEC at night. And you've shown no offensive consistency whatsoever. Good luck with that. I will take you to cover. Anything over a touchdown, I will take Florida and the points, but LSU will find a way to win this game, I think. But if, just on the off chance that Florida wins that game, it does re-illustrate the theory that I'm buying into no matter the outcome of that game, and that is the SEC is about to be a bloodbath. Nobody's escaping undefeated. I don't think anyone's escaping with one loss. It's going to be bad. Well, for the team. It's going to be great for you and I because all we have to do is sit here and watch it. You know, PateStateMaterial.com has new Ramen Noodle Express gear. We keep adding because that's what you keep purchasing. And so we've got new designs even above and beyond this coming. And we've also got the Fall Don't Lie Tour. Several versions of that T-shirt. Got all kinds of stuff. Someone asked us for koozies the other day. Boom. Had them in there by 5 p.m. by close of business. PateStateMaterial.com makes great birthday gifts. It's not close to Christmas yet, but it's never too early to do Christmas shopping. And we're updating that thing like every week. Good work being done over there. Let's continue. What a game. What a network. You know what? Everything about this makes no sense. Everything about what I'm about to say makes no sense. Okay. Try this one on for size. South Florida is facing Miami Saturday at 3:30. It is a ranked matchup that will air on the CW. Yes, all of that is somehow accurate. Great news, though, according to the AP. USF, you win this game, you may crack the top 15. Great news. It's like opportunity. That's what this country's all about. Opportunity. Now, you may have to beat 3 ranked teams to crack the top 15, depending on your logo, but opportunity nonetheless. Consider just for a second the dynamic here. All right, Miami knows that they've got Florida coming up, and they got some tough games. They go to Florida State in a few weeks, and the way this game did profile at the beginning of the year is Alex Golesh could sneak in there, and if Miami's not careful, we'll just erase all of that. Everybody's attention is on this game. This is the biggest thing that happened to the CW since Football Nightly Down South aired on it 10 years ago. And there may be like 13 people in the world who watched that show. But little known fact, I got my start doing a late night local college football show in Columbus, Georgia on the CW Jabama. I don't even know if it exists anymore. So, whomst amongst us thought that one day the butterfly effect of that show airing in one market could lead to a top 20 matchup for the world to see? How would it happen? The line on the game, 17.5. But it was last week as well. So how would this happen if it did happen? Well, I think USF would have to tilt the red zone heavily in their favor. Anytime they got down there, it needs to be 7. And if Miami gets down there, which they're going to, 3s at most, somehow, some way, you just got to, Todd Orlando's got to, his guys got to come through in the red zone. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Miami secondary's looked good, but it hasn't been tested 9 times yet. So maybe there's a leak or two to be found in that Miami secondary. Maybe it's not quite the impenetrable unit that they want it to be at this point in the season. Maybe, possibly. Maybe you find a staff mismatch. You know, maybe you force them into some uncomfortable positions. I'm just trying to think it out loud here. Here's why this is really tough. You got everyone's attention. The great news is you won last week. The bad news is you won last week. And so you got everyone's attention. This is the best team that you've played so far, by my estimation, obviously. It's a due-down spot for USF. Just purely betting terminology here for a second. But you find, if you bet this stuff over a long period of time, the commonality in college football is teams rarely play up 3 weeks in a row. And USF beat Boise convincingly in week 1. They go into the swamp and win last week. It's maybe one of the biggest wins in the history of that program. Now you're going to go play Miami. You got to be up a 3rd straight week. Normally, it doesn't happen. Even for the great teams and programs, it doesn't happen. So you got that. And also, Carson Beck knows how to take what you give him. DJ Lagway last week, we made the illustration on the show. It felt like Florida kept trying to hit home runs all night when all they needed was a single. Carson Beck will single you to death. He'll go 3-4 hole on the right side, got no problem with it. Now, he can pop you over the top if you give it to him, but they don't care. They'll go on 13-play drives all night and be fine with it. Miami's got takeover potential on both sides of the line of scrimmage in this game. On the other hand, Alex Golesh has shown the propensity to ugly these games up, and what they're trying to do is just get it to the fourth quarter. If they can get it to the fourth quarter and they got a puncher's chance, they'll take their chances. So will they get it there? Let's take a look at what the model thinks about this game. You see on the bottom of the screen right now, FanDuel's got Miami minus 17.5. The model thinks Miami minus 14.5. I disagree with the model. I don't think this is a good spot at all for USF. I fully credit them for making this game matter to the degree it does. 4:30 kickoff, by the way, not 3:30, my bad. I'm going to take Miami to win and cover. I think it's like a 20-point win, that kind of game for Miami. So it's not, by the way, if USF loses this game and anyone in their right mind looks and says, see, told you they shouldn't have been ranked that high last week, you are muted, maybe even blocked from the channel. Has nothing to do with it. Let's move on. I hold in my hands the JP poll. Yep, not saying it. Yep. JP poll, week 3 edition here. Now, unlike the AP, unlike the commissioner's poll, which I will release Thursday, these are not rankings. And since I have unveiled the commissioner's poll, I'm not really listening to any slander about the JP poll. See that? These are not rankings. If you're listening on podcast, you missed this helpful tutorial graphic on the monitor behind us. We installed these monitors just to do that. These are not rankings. These are power ratings. The model right here is telling us who it would favor versus who, or whomst, on a neutral field. I do need to inform you before we get into this, there's a 10-point gap right now between the number 1 team and the number 16 team. It's pretty compressed at the top. There is then a 10-point gap between number 16 and number 45. So there's about a 20-point gap between number 1 and number 45. I say that to say, again, expect total and outright carnage in college football for the rest of the year, because there's just not a lot of separation. I've never seen it like this. The SEC in particular is just going to be a bloodbath. You need to get ready for it. No one's dead until they're absolutely mathematically dead. And I don't know that anyone's really alive either. So I'm going to pull them in random order like we did last week. Tennessee, since we're going to see them in person Saturday. Turns out Tennessee's the number 14 team in the JP poll. Missouri, though, is number 19. They are up 9 spots since week 1. And I got to be honest. I think JP poll may be a little low on Missouri still. We have answered the quarterback question. I mean, that dude's playing with the moxie of the next 5 guys combined. Bo Perbula getting his shot, playing for the right guy, playing in the right system, not having to do it all himself. We do have a new number 1 team this week. The Ohio State Buckeyes are number 1 in the country. Let's just pause. And you may think to yourself, Ryan Day and that organization, they're competing for Big Ten championships. They want to beat the team up north. They want to win national titles. No. Really, you want to be number 1 in the JP poll. And anything downstream of that is just a nice bonus. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if Ryan Day had this kind of incentive baked into his contract. Weeks spent at number 1 in the JP poll. Hey, half of these guys have AP poll incentives baked in, and that makes way less sense than the JP poll. I mean, at least I can explain mine. Who do we have next? Notre Dame's number 6. Makes sense. Indiana has cracked the top 20, ladies and gentlemen. Indiana is up 1.5 points in their raw rating. They are number 20 now. Florida State is number 17. Florida State is up 6 points since week 1. So they go into week 1, they beat Bama. They just annihilated a directional school from Texas last week. We have bumped them up 6 points, almost a touchdown. That is a massive bump up. Especially when I tell you there's only a 10-point gap between number 1 and number 16. You can see how big a 6-point bump means in your power rating. Texas is down 4 spots. They are number 4. And it's not really a huge drop, but they were number 1 last week. And we all know how much the model loves Texas. The model, I think that's an actual tear rolling down the computer screen as it had to bump Texas down. I'm sorry, little buddy. I'm sorry. Don't worry. They got a shot to make it up to you. LSU's number 10. USC, biggest detachment team, JP poll versus pretty much everyone else. USC, we have number 11. Huge detachment. Now, you want to put this exercise to the test? Okay. I have it on good authority in a few weeks. USC is going to Illinois. I can't remember exactly where they are, but I think Illinois is solidly in the top 15 in the AP poll. The commissioner's poll will probably have Illinois top 15 again this week. USC is not even ranked in the AP poll. I think USC may be favored when they go there. The model would favor USC against Illinois on the road right now. Point spreads don't mean anything. No one needs to remind me of that. I understand. You need to understand the entire purpose of this particular exercise is to project that. So let's see. Let's see what that old spread looks like. We got Georgia at number 3. So we got number 3 going on the road to number 14 in the JP poll this week. We got a new number 2 team. That's Oregon. Oregon, Sarah McLachlan special, and new holder of the number 2 spot in the JP poll. It's a great week for Dan Lanning. Penn State's number 5, I believe. Yeah. So Clemson's number 15. And I question whether we're too high on them. Now, Dabo could shut everyone up, including me and the JP poll, really. It's more than me. It's the JP. It's the model. I'm just speaking for the model. If they just go and handle business emphatically this weekend, that would quell a lot of concerns. But I look at it, and when I fill out the rest of this thing, you'll be able to see what I mean. But, I'm already looking at 3 teams right now. Clemson versus Florida State, neutral field. Who would I take right now? I'd take Florida State. So I think the model's too high on Clemson. I'd take Missouri over Clemson right now. So I think the model is too high on Clemson by about 5 or 6 spots. So a point or 2, in other words. But we'll see. Miami's number 7. Ole Miss is up 4 spots. They're number 13. Let's see. Bama's at 9. So, there's nothing that I can do to explain to the people who have a problem with Bama being top 10 that can further hammer home what this is and the difference between this and a ranking. In an odds makers format, in a power rating format, Bama's not fallen out of the top 20. They're just, with that roster, they're not. Because we're talking about how you set a line on a game, not merit-based stuff that we would do in the commissioner's poll. Auburn's number 18. Utah's number 16. Now, remember, or maybe you don't even know, so maybe I'm informing you for the first time. We got Utah at 16. Now, that's the highest power-rated Big 12 team right now. Texas Tech is our next highest-rated Big 12 team. We've got them 23rd. They play next week in Salt Lake City. They play next week. It's a monster game in the Big 12, especially now that people saw Arizona State humbled a little bit. You're starting to think, well, maybe ASU is not the favorite in that league. Maybe Utah is. Maybe Texas Tech is. Oh, wow, they play next week. Yes, they do. Texas A&M is number 12, and OU is number 8. I'm not saying that I was right on Oklahoma because they still got a ways to go, but it did feel good last week to watch them take care of business because we got hated on all spring for having Oklahoma too high. Of course, any hater of the Oklahoma ratings, not talking about that, they've just moved on to the Florida rating. And as you see, Florida's nowhere to be found. We're not perfect. We never claimed to be. Florida 21, by the way. Georgia Tech 22, Texas Tech 23, Nebraska 24, South Carolina 25. Now, I look at that and I say, self, I wonder how close those odds are to those of FanDuel. So oftentimes I correspond with FanDuel and I say, what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about that? Ultimately, the games happen and you can bet them over there. Or if you don't bet, that's cool. And if you've never bet before, please learn to do it responsibly before you ever do. And don't be betting money you don't have and don't be borrowing anyone's money and just no. But if you can do it responsibly and you have the disposable income to do it, go to FanDuel and do it. But my point was, even if you don't go over there and bet, if you're just interested in some of the future games and what the numbers are right now, you could go look at the Georgia versus Georgia Tech line right now. That game doesn't happen until the end of the season, but it's at FanDuel right now. Not only can you look at it, you can actually put money on that game. You can bet Ohio State minus 6.5 at Michigan right now. I just looked at it within the last hour. And so you can do that over there. New signups, new customers, you use that QR code or fanduel.com/Josh Pate. If you enter through those doors, they're going to give you $300 in bonus bets off a $5 wager if it wins. And I don't mean you have to bet it against the spread. You can go find Miami, 17.5-point favorites this weekend. Just bet $5 on the money line. All they got to do is win, and you get $300 in bonus bets. So I am not allowed to guarantee you that that's free money because it's really not. There is a small shot you lose. It's a pretty small shot, though. Save it for, you know what, Bradley? Never mind. Yes, we are. Bradley has informed me that I skipped over one important piece of paper. Very important for reasons that will be made apparent in just a second. Clemson at Georgia Tech. Saturday, noon Eastern kickoff right there in Atlanta. Here's the issue with veteran teams. Clemson is a veteran team, obviously. The problem with veteran teams is if they struggle early, there's not a whole lot of unknown. You know who the players are. You kind of just got what you got. And that's what worries me about Clemson. We're watching them not able to run the ball right now. They have been banged up at receiver. I will grant you that. But it just hasn't been as dynamic a team as you expected. Now, sometimes you're ultra young and inexperienced and you got a lot of position battles going on. And a team clicks in week 3 or they click in week 6. I don't think that's going to be Clemson this year. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's going to be them this year because it's a pretty known commodity. And we circled this game in the spring. I said it was one of the most underrated games of the year. And everyone said, oh, it's Clemson in a blowout. Well, here we are. Game week. Clemson's a 3.5-point favorite in this game. So here we are. Okay. Whose identity do you trust more? Whose identity? Who's more in touch with their identity? Because I think the answer is Georgia Tech. I think the answer is the underdog. I kind of banked on them being competitive in this game because of that hunch even in the preseason. And that was before I even knew what Clemson would look like. For all I knew, they were going to beat LSU. But I had this one circled and have for a while. The reason Clemson was going to be too much in this game, according to some, has not really materialized yet. You thought the receiver room was enhanced to the point where Cade Klubnik could beat you throwing the ball, and they'd be able to run it enough, but they could lean on him to win. Well, they haven't been able to run it enough. And the wide receiver room's been banged up, and I don't know if they get Antonio Williams back this week. And even if they do, look, I mean, Georgia Tech doesn't have the best secondary on planet Earth, but they may not need to. So that stuff hasn't materialized yet. And it's kind of like we talked about with Tennessee and Georgia. If you're sitting here telling me, well, Clemson can't run the ball, but they also can't stretch the field, it doesn't take an all-world defense to challenge you and put you in a blender. So I know one thing. Talking about identity, I know Georgia Tech won't flinch here. It's no accident. When they beat Miami last year, it's not an accident. When they didn't beat Georgia. When they took them to several overtimes and almost beat them in Athens, that's not an accident. And I'm telling you, if Clemson has no vertical threat here, they need defensive or special teams points or huge assistance there to win this game. It's just reality. The only other thing that could happen is Georgia Tech's had turnover issues so far this year. Now, if that pops up again, I can't predict that. No one can predict that. But if that pops up again, that could be a game changer. But it's not that tough to figure out. I'm just trying to find paths here. If you cannot run it and they don't respect the deep ball, can you go find 24 points? You know, you count on your defense. Clemson's defense will show up. You count on your defense. Can you go find 24 points? Because so far you scored 10 against LSU. You scored 27 and had to scratch those out against Troy. So now you go on the road for the first time this year, by the way, against a team that's already tasting blood in Georgia Tech. Can you find 24? Because if you can't, I don't know that you're going to win the game Saturday. Here's the deal. Cade Klubnik has to will them to a win. Because I'm not going to go into this thing counting on them running the ball. I promise you Haynes King can will his team to a win. Cade Klubnik's going to have to probably will his to a win. Clemson defense, though, having said all that, they can completely flip this thing with turnovers. So let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel right now has got Clemson minus 3.5. We still don't think it's tight enough. We got Clemson minus 1.5. I've had it circled for months. I have had a good feel on this game for months. Georgia Tech's going to win this game outright. And then it paints a really interesting picture in the ACC. Frankly, it already is. Even if Clemson wins this game, Georgia Tech's not out of anything. But Miami's in that thing, Florida State's in that thing, and then especially if this goes this way this Saturday, then you got Georgia Tech that's at the table, Clemson's still at the table. Yeah, I've felt that upset for a while. So I'm going with Georgia Tech to win that one outright. Okay, Ramen Noodle Express time. We bet that game earlier in the week when it was 6.5. The other night we handed it out at Georgia Tech plus 6.5. It's all the way down to 3.5 now. That's why you got to watch the show on Sunday night. So we locked in Georgia Tech plus 6.5 Sunday. We locked in Cal plus 2.5 on Sunday. We have two more. You hear them right there. Two more best bets to add to the Ramen Noodle Express. One of them is Oregon State plus 22.5. They're playing Texas Tech. Texas Tech has Utah next week. Texas Tech needs to do one thing and one thing only: win and get out of this thing healthy. And I think they will. I just don't think it'll be in a blowout. Tulane is playing Duke. Duke, led by Darian Mensah, Tulane's quarterback that left for very, very, very greener pastures. There's no pastures at Duke. Yeah, but there's a lot of green. There's a lot of green. That's what he left for. Can't even be mad. I heard Summerall talk about it. He said, hey, I've left jobs for more money. At some point, you can't even be mad at a kid. But you can beat him. So Tulane is welcoming Duke into New Orleans, and they're being given 1.5 points. We're going to take both of them because we think Tulane's going to win the game outright. So we're going to take Tulane plus 1.5, Oregon State plus 22.5. Those are two more added best bets. Good show tonight. Had a lot of discombobulation behind the scenes today, and the staff came through, pulled it together. And good, solid show. We'll be back Thursday. I think we're going to start the show an hour earlier Thursday night. So maybe 8, 7. So 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Thank you, Bradley. And I'll confirm that on the socials, but plan on that. Probably plan on Kublik as well, but definitely plan on an hour earlier start time. Until then, for the entire crew here, led by Director Bradley, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. We'll see you Thursday. Until then, have a great rest of your evening, and God bless.